Chauvin guilty on all charges. What are your thoughts?
I'm kinda surprised. I thought they'd nail him for manslaughter and third-degree murder, but I didn't think they'd get second-degree murder to stick.
I'm curious what comments the mods are deleting. Edit. I had this account for over a year and this comment tripled my karma. LMFAO. Thank y'all. Smile.
Genuinely honest legal question here. How do you get charged for second and third-degree murder and manslaughter? I always thought since they're all different levels you'd pick the one that applies. Basically my question is why is manslaughter even there when second degree is much worse anyway, and why still use all three and convict on all three?
Thinking about how we all watched him murder George with our own eyes and we were still anxious about the verdict.
From a POV outside of the States, it makes no difference unless major changes are actually being reinforced and made.
Keep filming the police, people. It was because of Darnella Frazier filming that brought police brutality to the public stage and started many calls for police reform.
I think that the turning of his own department, and chief, against him in the case is indicative that Chauvin's on-camera case was such a difficult thing to defend that he was to become a sacrificial lamb in a sense. In order to defend the existing police establishment without significant change, they had to make a show of holding an officer accountable for crime. In this sense, I believe Chauvin is being used to diffuse public anger because he would have been a very hard case to justify and the people's discontent was reaching a boiling point. I'd love to hear fellow Redditors' theories on this.
He was a bad cop and deserved it. Hopefully this will give other bad cops a reason to pause and wonder if they will be the next Chauvin. Might stop them from doing something reckless. Smartphones might be the cause of people not interacting face to face but are a brilliant way of capturing injustices.
I believe that justice has carried the day. Though this is not the end. There is still an urgent need for police reform. For our sake as citizens and their sake as officers of the law. And #X200B, we need civilian oversight. No more officers investigating themselves. We need mandatory body cams that are always recording. The technology is there to store a set amount of time, such as an hour before a button is pushed, which will save the set amount of time before the push and everything after it. Officers will not have to remember to push it immediately. They will have an hour, or more depending on the system to remember. We need mental health services in this country desperately, better training for officers, and better pay too. We can't expect to pay them poverty wages and get the best of the best. It's fact, unfortunately. We need a culture change.
If someone has a history of concussions and I hit them in the head with a baseball bat and kill them, I don't get to say they died because of their history of concussions. I'm glad the jury realized that.
He deserved to be convicted, but I don't have the same joy and excitement a lot of people seem to have about it. Veep situation top to bottom, and I don't find anything happy about it.
I am extremely surprised. I'll admit, after watching closing arguments and bits and pieces of the trial, I believed the manslaughter charge was likely. It seemed there could be reasonable doubt on the murder charges and I expected those to be an issue for the jury. I was shocked when both of the murder charges came through.
Regardless of my opinion, I should stay off of social media for a bit.
Anyone else go straight to controversial?
How can you be guilty of 3 different types of murder, with 1 death? Serious.
If a man being held accountable for crimes he committed is a turning point for justice, the bar must be on the beep floor.
Good, but between Waters' remarks tainting the perception of the juror's objectivity, and the judge not sequestering the jury, I think the defense has a pretty good case for an appeal. I agree with the verdict, but I don't think this is over.
I think people were waiting for the verdict to come in so they could karma whore on our AskReddit.
I'm thinking people should stop feeling so excited until after the appeals process. This is a major controversial high-profile case. It isn't over yet.
Definitely the right call. I just hope he's not made into a scapegoat for a system that enabled him for so long.
I'm sorting everything by controversial.
I don't know much about murder laws in Minnesota, but I'm surprised they got anything beyond manslaughter. Manslaughter is when you do something wrong that results in someone's death. That seems appropriate here. Murder requires intent. But I guess the fact that he had 9 minutes to think about it tipped it over into murder. Glad he got something at least.
Fine with it. I support cops and believe they are necessary in our society for sure. But that was completely unnecessary what he did. You don't need to restrain someone like that for 9+ minutes after they're already cuffed and you have backup.
I was surprised. I didn't expect more than manslaughter. But I'm extremely glad he got hit with murder too and it stuck. I feel two things. 1, police should not longer be given a "well, I was doing my job" and hiding behind their badge for when they are working. Even then they do their job so poorly they'd literally kill a man. And 2, police should be aware that there are finally consequences for such gross negligence.
Let's just hope the sentencing isn't half-assed.
This probably needs a serious tag.
He's been made a scapegoat. That doesn't mean I think he is innocent per se, but the police acting like what he did went against his training. His beep. I did some research and found at least 3 other men who died in identical circumstances to Floyd. Almost none of you will know their names or the names of the officers involved. In the other incidents, the officers also seemed unaware they had killed the person they were detaining. The reason why Chauvin was even put on trial is because of the national outrage. He most likely wouldn't have even been fired otherwise. There are dozens of officers who got away with worse. In fact, the officer who told people to stay back while Floyd lay there dead was reported by 2 other officers way back in 2014 for beating a suspect up and knocking their teeth out. Wasn't fired, arrested or charged. The knee to neck, back, even head is a fairly common restraint. The real inquiry should be into how the PDs train their officers. They are trained to use brute force over de-escalation tactics, and despite having access to firearms they have some of the shortest training in the world. Despite 4 men dying from this sort of restraint method, only a few states' PDs have banned chokes in that particular restraint, only a few have made it mandatory for an officer to wear a body cam, and only a few have promised to re-evaluate and retrain their officers. Almost all of these facts have been covered up or are purposely being ignored to frame him. His arrest and conviction might feel like a victory for some, but it will mean nothing if the police aren't held accountable and some serious inquiries are held into how they train their officers. Whether he killed Floyd accidentally or not, this is something that has happened before and will happen again unless the real issue is tackled. My theory is that the police like having a few bullies and thugs to keep gang members in check. They want people who are just as capable of cruelty and violence as the bangers are, because the bangers will take advantage and bully officers who are too soft, and the reason why they initially cover for officers who go too far is because it's their fault and not necessarily the fault of the officer. If you owned a business and one of your employees did something outrageous, you'd most likely be forgiven and it would be fair to assume that it was their fault and not yours. But if several of your employees had done something outrageous, you don't even fire them and this goes on for years and you take no action, it's fair to assume you either don't care or you train them to do that.
I'm glad, but I think this is one small step of many more needed in this country. I hope the police reform bill passes. Accountability is good, but we need more.
It's a good start, but the only real justice is when killings like this stop.
What happens to the other officers on the scene? Does this make them accomplices accountable?
May your day be filled with joy and happiness. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more quality content every day.